All you Android phone users out there now have a reason to rejoice. The new Rain Man digital app is now available in the Google Play Store. Simply search Rain Man Digital and download the app today for free. And now you can take the entire Rain Man Digital Network anywhere you go. Supernatural The Crossroads, The Rain Man Show, Star Wars From the Back to Tank, Critique Revolve, and Weird West Radio, all in this app. Go to the Google Play Store and download Rain Man Digital. Just search Rain Man Digital and start listening. Warning. Critique Revolve contains adult language and discussions. If you're easily offended, do not continue to listen.
All right, boys and girls, cats and kittens, it's Brian Smith once again with another episode of Critique Revolve here on Rain Man Digital. This time we have a very special treat for you because joining me in studio today is none other than David Sabal from, what's the name of your show? From the Back to Tank?
From the Back to Tank.
From the Back to Tank, which is also here on Rain Man. And that one, you've got Das Lucas does that show with you, right?
Yep.
And Greg and Michael.
And, of course, the Commander.
Right, of course, the Commander Michael. So this week, Dave and I went and saw what could have been a very polarizing movie, I think.
Honestly, I was expecting it.
Right, in the new MCU. This is the end of Phase 2.
Is it the end or is it the beginning?
Nope, this is the end of Phase 2. This was originally supposed to be the beginning of Phase 3 for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but they actually made Captain America, I think, is the
Winter Soldier?
Yeah, I think Winter Soldier, right?
Well, that makes sense. I mean, toward the story.
No. Winter Soldier was in that was already happened, David.
Yeah.
You're behind here.
Or you mean Civil War?
Civil War is going to kick off Phase 3 for the Marvel Universe. So today, what Dave and I went and saw was Ant-Man, a PG-13, 117-minute action, sci-fi, comedy, special effects bonanza that comes out July 17th, 2015. Now, of course, for those of you that listen to the show, we know that we review pretty much all of the Marvel movies. It's one of the nice things about being hooked up with Disney, especially now that Disney owns Marvel.
Which is really good.
Well, and it was very, very obvious with this one because, of course, ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, which is Lucasfilm, and then also LucasArts did the sound. The special effects were all done by ILM.
Yes.
And it was very obvious that you just had the stamps of Marvel or of Disney all over this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Everywhere. Of course, the cast for this one, you've got Paul Rudd playing Ant-Man. Scott Lang.
He was awesome in this one.
We'll get into it. Let me go through the cast, David. We got Michael Douglas playing the creator or the first man to be Ant-Man. We've got Evangeline Lilly playing Hope Van Dyne, Hank Pym's daughter. You've then got Corey Stoll playing Darren Cross and Yellow Jacket. Bobby Cannavale. I don't know, man. Some Italian tall dude playing Paxton. Judy Greer playing Maggie Lang, the estranged ex-wife, I guess, of Scott Lang. Then you get a ton of people in this movie. Actually, you got Michael Peña, David Dastmalchian, T.I. or Tip Harris, Wood Harris, Haley Atwell, John Slattery, Martin Donovan, Garrett Morris actually makes an appearance with this one. I love Garrett Morris.
Yeah, that was a cool cameo.
Yeah, it was cool. There was a lot of really neat cameos in this movie that I don't want to spoil all of them for you guys. Obviously, we don't do that here for the most part. But let's get into the movie real quick. So, Ant-Man, July 17th, 2015. Armed with a super suit with the astonishing ability to shrink in scale but increase in strength, con man Scott Lang. I don't like that.
Con man Scott Lang?
He's not a con man.
Dude, he was.
He was not a con man. No, he was not a con man.
Why did he go to prison?
For burglaring. He's a burglar. He's not a con man. It's not like he he's not Lex Luthor. He didn't swindle some woman out of her fortune to then, be a real estate tycoon.
Honestly, dude,
he's not a con
Scott
man.
Lang.
He's not a con man.
Scott Lang?
He's not a con man. He's a burglar. Anyway, he must embrace his inner hero and help his mentor. This is wrong. Dr. Hank Pym plan and pull off a heist that will save the world. Pym is not his mentor. This is bullshit.
No. Yes, I do agree with that. He is the mentor.
Well, he's only the mentor once they already decides that he's going to do the heist, and I don't want to get into it.
Yeah,
that's plot.
That's part plot.
That's part
we'll get
plot.
into that. But I do agree. He is the mentor.
But
so
he's
that's
not.
correct.
This is bullshit. Anyway, he's his employer at that point. Is how I look at it. He's his employer more than anything. But anyway, so what you're looking at in this movie is, everybody knows Paul Rudd. I mean, from Clueless to I Love You Man to Role Models, 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up. He did all of those movies, of course, with the hell's that director? Judd Apatow.
Yes.
He's been a staple for the last, 10 years.
Dude, this was out of his range, though, don't you think?
I don't think it was out of his range really too much. I don't think it was too much, honestly, of a stretch for him because we've seen him play serious roles. We've seen him play funny roles, like the straight comedies. And of all of the Marvel movies, I think tonally, this was definitely the funnest of all of the movies. And I don't mean fun like big explosions and shit blows up.
It was the most lighthearted.
Yeah, it was definitely it was lighthearted, but it still had heart though. This is one of those movies where I think you can take a date to it, and there's going to be parts of it where your date's going to be all and then there's going to be other parts where as a dude you're going to be like
get the feels.
Yeah, I mean, having a daughter myself, and I think part of what they did with this movie was while being a very funny movie. And Paul Rudd, of course, bringing comedy to the Marvel universe, more so than what you saw in Guardians of the Galaxy.
I would agree with that.
I think it's one of those things where Marvel has gotten away from that dark superhero, like you saw with Tony Stark and Iron Man, and then you had the Boy Scout and Captain America.
Yes,
and then you had Captain America: Winter Soldier, which was Boy Scouty but still pretty dark.
Yeah.
Then you go,
Guardians,
the Avengers movies. Which of course has the tormented Hulk, and then you have the Thor movies, which honestly at this point I would probably put at the bottom of my Marvel list.
I don't know, dude.
I would. No, seriously.
Thor 2 was good.
No, I'm not saying that Thor 2 wasn't good. I'm just saying that as a whole, if you look at the Thor character, I think he is the most underdeveloped in the entire universe.
More so than the Hulk?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the Hulk, dude, it's all about his personal experience and his personal demons and him trying to transcend being more than just the monster. And so you get a lot, and we don't have a lot of backstory really on him, but we do. Because you have to remember that the first Hulk movie with Ed Norton still counts as part of the Marvel Universe.
Yeah, it does.
And now, it's not the Ang Lee Hulk, which doesn't count.
No, thank God.
Man, I actually liked the Ang Lee Hulk.
There was just something wrong with the Ang Lee Hulk that I never really got.
You know what was right about it, though?
What?
Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah.
Oh, shut up, dude. She's fucking hot. I don't care. Anyway, but so with this one, they went a lot lighter than even Guardians, and Guardians was light.
Oh yeah.
Compared to like Iron Man 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Iron Man 2 and 3 were kind of dark. Not Batman dark, not Nolan Batman dark, but still dark. And I think it's one of those things where the Marvel Universe has they started off with the Iron Man movies that were dark, and then Tony Stark and all of his issues.
Yeah.
And he has a myriad of issues.
Yeah, they didn't even touch on it.
Then you get into like Thor's family issues.
Yes.
Right? You get into like the Hulk's like
personal demons.
Is depression.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Then you get into like Black Widow and her fucked up like childhood teenage years.
Yeah.
And then you have like Hawkeye.
Well, Hawkeye is the most normal, dude.
He is the most normal, but he had to keep all that hidden. True. And it wasn't until this last movie that you find out that Hawkeye's actually just a normal dude that lives on a farm with 2 kids and a wife.
Yeah.
And that's weird to me. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, that was weird to me. I liked it. I thought it was a really good...
I was about to say, because I liked that part of
I did too.
the Hawkeye character.
I liked it a lot. I thought that was pretty cool what they did with it, but it was one of those things where I was like, wasn't expecting it.
Uh-huh.
I was like, oh, okay. And then you have like this whole thing about Captain America, which is the fish out of water story. But not only that, like he's got his own personal shit with Bucky, and then with, Agent Peggy Carter.
Yeah.
And, just all of the missed opportunities because he was serving his country with the super serum and everything.
Basically, it's the man out of time.
Well, exactly. It's Rip Van Winkle.
Yeah.
Only he's a superhuman.
Uh-huh.
And then you've got like the whole thing with like I said, Thor and his family and like that whole fucked up shit. And then but then you look at like Guardians, and it was light and it was funny because Chris Pratt is a funny dude.
No, that's true.
Like I think if anyone else had played Star-Lord, it wouldn't have been as funny.
Uh-huh.
Right? So Pratt brought the humor to that. And then you cast somebody like Paul Rudd in Ant-Man, which of course Edgar Wright had originally written the script for that and had done a ton of work on the movie.
Yeah.
Before he left because of creative differences with Disney.
That was the first thing that really worried me.
Well, of course.
Early on.
Of course. And when you look at it, it was one of those things where, you know, he had a vision for what he wanted the movie to be, and he had been working on it for 2 years before Disney bought Marvel.
Yeah.
Then Disney comes in and they're like, no, this is what we're going to do.
But dude, it makes me wonder though, what in the world was Edgar Wright's vision of Ant-Man? Because this movie itself, doesn't it feel kind of like it's kind of that tongue-in-cheek?
Well, I mean, Edgar Wright still got credit for the story. He still got credit for the screenplay. Joe Cornish also got credit for the story and screenplay. And then Adam McKay and Paul Rudd came in.
Yeah.
And changed it up a little bit. And of course, this one was it McKay, or it was Peyton Reed that directed this. What a goofy looking dude that is too. But I mean, and it's one of those things where, like, honestly, I think Edgar Wright leaving worried me.
Yes.
What worried me even more was that they gave the movie to Peyton Reed. Because if you look at what Peyton Reed has done, it's scary, dude. Like, honestly, he did 3 episodes of New Girl, which I like, but the 3 episodes that he did are 3 of my least favorite episodes.
Really?
Yeah, I liked that show, but I didn't actually really care for the 3 episodes that he did. He did Yes Man, which I think is actually a severely underrated movie.
It is.
But it's not a superhero movie. Like, not even close, right? And he did The Breakup with Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn, which, while giving us Jennifer Aniston's side boob, which was fantastic, it's the fucking breakup.
Although, you know what, dude? After seeing this, though, with those movies in mind...
Well, hold on. I've got one that's even better than that.
What?
He directed Bring It On. Dude, well, hold on. Do you know how many times I have watched Bring It On since Christmas?
How many?
About 104.
Why?
It's Dakota's favorite movie.
Oh, ow.
Yeah, no, dude. Ow is correct. Ow is absolutely correct. Yeah, so, I mean, looking at what he's done, dude, there's nothing there that would say that he had the ability to direct something like Ant-Man.
But you know what, dude? His type of directing style fits this character and how the story pulled out. If you think about it, look at all those movies that you mentioned. They're all very personal, very in character type of stories.
Very much so.
And I think that's what, now that I think about it, I don't think Edgar Wright could have pulled it off.
Dude, I actually disagree with you there. I think Edgar Wright could have absolutely pulled it off, because you have to look at, like, what was it, The Bar at the End of the World, or what was the last one of the ice cream trilogy? The Coronado trilogy, or whatever you want to call it, Blood and Ice Cream.
I forgot.
But
I can't remember it.
It was the pub. What's the name of the pub? Wasn't it like, I don't remember. Anyway, but I thought that was a very personal. Spaced was a very personal story.
Uh-huh.
And you've seen Spaced, right? The
yes.
TV show. So I think I wholeheartedly disagree with you. I think Edgar Wright could have easily pulled this off. But what would have kind of made me wonder about Edgar Wright is the Paul Rudd part.
Really?
I don't know if Edgar Wright could have pulled it out of Paul Rudd. Because let's be honest here, when you look at the stuff that Edgar Wright's done, it works because of Simon Pegg.
Yes,
it does. I mean, that's just kind of cut and dry how that is. You know?
Yeah,
Edgar Wright is as good as Simon Pegg is.
Yeah,
like, that's honestly how I feel, and I don't mean any disrespect to The World's End. That was the name of it, and I don't mean any disrespect to Edgar Wright. But you look at his track record, and it's Spaced, Dawn of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, The World's End, and then he has Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I was about to say,
yeah, didn't he do Scott Pilgrim?
Right, which, while one of my personal favorite movies, I don't necessarily think it was the best adaptation that could have been done for that particular medium.
You think?
No, I think it could have been done better. Part of it was...
I think it was done well for what they could do.
And see, my whole thing with that is I think that he latched on to Michael Cera in that role, and I think that was a mistake. I think that almost anyone else could have played Scott Pilgrim. Like, the kid that, in my mind, truthfully, the kid that I would have rather have seen play Scott Pilgrim than Michael Cera is Percy from Percy Jackson.
Oh,
you know,
I can't remember. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I can't remember his name right now.
Yeah, I really like him, and I think he would have actually made a better Scott Pilgrim. But that's neither.
I don't know. But yeah, that's
neither here nor there. That's a whole other show entirely. So with Ant-Man, like I said, it's a lighter fare than what you're used to from Marvel, and Marvel, of course, has always been lighter than DC.
Yes,
like that's just kind of been their calling card, is that they're the family friendly kind of, for all intents and purposes, they're much more family friendly than watching a Batman movie.
Yes, absolutely.
Or even watching Man of Steel.
Yeah, especially after seeing like what we were seeing in this past weekend with Comic-Con, this movie just is totally lighthearted compared to what's coming out.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, you look at what DC released, and I will say this, that DC knocked it out of the park at San Diego Comic-Con.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
They actually, I don't doubt that Ben Affleck is the right choice for Batman. I never really did. I always thought the same way. I always thought Ben Affleck was perfect for that role. I did too.
The only one, like I'd mentioned to you on the, even after seeing the trailer, was Jesse Eisenberg. I don't buy it.
I know you don't. I know you don't buy it.
Especially since he's so young.
Well, see, here's my thing with Eisenberg. He already played Lex Luthor once. He played Lex Luthor in the Facebook movie.
You know, everyone constantly says that. I'm like going, no, that is not Lex.
Absolutely.
That's not Lex Luthor.
Absolutely, dude. A manipulative little shithead who's only in it for himself, but pretends like he's doing it for the good of everyone. That's fucking Lex Luthor.
But
dude, he
lacks that braininess of Lex Luthor, that smartness.
Are you kidding me? The guy designed fucking Facebook.
I'm talking about especially in the comics. Lex Luthor is Hannibal. He's scary. He's scary smart.
Well, okay.
I don't get that with Jesse Eisenberg.
Well, but you know what? What did we see of Eisenberg? We saw 22 seconds.
It's true. That's true.
You have no idea what you're looking at.
Yeah,
right? You know what I mean. And yeah, his hair looks awful. But that could have been a wig.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know. We don't know at this point. And honestly, the reveal of the kryptonite, I peed a little.
Yeah.
So,
but going back to
Ant-Man, where I keep trying to take the show. You know, you look at Paul Rudd in that role, and I don't know if anybody else could have pulled it off. I don't. I've always really liked Paul Rudd.
Yes.
I've always liked him. But looking at more of the cast, you have Michael Douglas, who honestly, to me, was the perfect Hank Pym.
Oh, absolutely.
And
he won me over. That was the one role I was like,
yeah, exactly, really? Exactly. And then you have Evangeline Lilly, who, of course, you guys know from Lost and the other stuff that she's done. I mean, I think Lost is the biggest thing that she's done. You also then have like she was in Real Steel, which is one of those movies that I actually secretly will watch.
I'm with you on that one. I actually like that movie.
Of course, she was in the Hobbit movies.
Yes.
And then also The Hurt Locker. So we know that she has range. There's no question there that she's got range. And I think her playing the straight man in this movie worked really, really well. Because there's a lot of comedy. There is a lot of comedic moments, and there's a lot of comedic lines. And I think that having the female play the straight role, kind of like they did with Pepper Potts in the Iron Man movies. I mean, it's the same thing. Like it's a very similar, but still different enough that you don't feel like you've seen it before in the Marvel universe. Yeah,
I think that's what I like about it, is the fact that they really danced on that line of, you know, like what you said, the jokiness of right. Marvel, but still kind of bringing down that story to a more serious tone to that right. people can enjoy. And I do like the fact that you're right. I mean, she is the perfect straight woman.
She was
for the role.
She was absolutely for this.
I was expecting Michael Douglas to play the straight role.
But that didn't happen. He did at times, and he wasn't necessarily funny.
Yeah,
I don't know if I would say that he was funny in the role. I don't think he had a lot of funny lines, but he definitely played well with Paul Rudd.
Absolutely, I thought the chemistry there was really good.
Well, and that's the thing. Like this movie kind of hinged on its chemistry between the actors, and
even with the actor who played the villain,
Corey Stoll.
Corey Stoll. Yeah. Even his chemistry with Michael Douglas and the character of Hope was actually really good. I found that actually really well done.
Absolutely. And Michael Stoll, what the hell? Corey Stoll, of course, is in The Strain on TV. If you're not watching it, you should be, because it's amazing. He was in
best vampire TV show I've ever seen.
I agree with you there. He was also in Dark Places, Anesthesia. He did. I think he had a small role in The Bourne Legacy. That's the Bourne movie with Rainier.
Yeah,
Jeremy and then he was also in Salt.
Oh, the
one with Angelina Jolie.
Angelina Jolie.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where you might not know who he is, but you will definitely recognize him when you see him on screen. He's a decent actor. I mean, I think that he played the part very well, and he was a villain, and he really had no redeeming quality whatsoever. But you still didn't hate him.
You didn't hate him because like he was the way he was because of how he was treated.
Well, I mean, at least that's what they lead you to believe.
Yes.
And then you find out some more stuff during the course of the movie that kind of makes it all make even more sense about why it is the way that the way that he is. Now, I talked about Bobby Cannavale and Judy Greer, who were they were tertiary characters. Like, they're not super important, but they are super important to the movie, to the feelings that are elicited from the movie.
Yes.
You know, of course, Paul Rudd or Ant-Man Scott gets out of prison, and she's the ex-wife, and they have a daughter together, and she's a very relatable character. And their relationship, I think, is what anyone who has that split family, you've got the ex-wife or the ex-girlfriend or the baby's mama, whatever, and there's drama there, whatever it is, they almost have the relationship that you want.
Yeah.
You know, where she's understanding and she gets it, but she's done with his shit.
But you know what, dude? And I found that really refreshing because that goes against the stereotype of like
the bitchy ex-wife. Yeah, or the bitchy baby's mom.
Yeah, baby's mom and stuff like that. It goes against the stereotype, and I thought that it felt more real to me.
Right, absolutely.
Watching the family chemistry work out.
Well, absolutely. And of course, Bobby Cannavale is her new, or fiance, I guess, at this point. And it's one of those things where I've seen him in a ton of stuff. He was in The Bone Collector. He was in The Station Agent. And actually, my favorite thing that he was in is Chef.
He was in Chef?
He was. He was actually a central character in Chef, David. But Chef is one of those movies where I don't know if I talked about it on this show before, but I know Thomas and I have talked about it. And Chef is a fantastic film. It's a smaller film from 2014, and it's one of those things where I think if you haven't seen it, you need to look it up on Netflix because it is that good. And you see Bobby's range in that movie. Flat out. You see it, and it's actually really good. So anyway, talking a little bit more about the cast here, you then have these three, and I don't want to call them bumbling idiots.
Sidekicks.
But they're like this weird little crew that has been assembled, and it's kind of headed by Michael Peña, who was in Fury, End of Watch, American Hustle, Shooters. This guy actually has a ridiculously impressive resume.
Yeah.
You know, to be honest, dude, he was in Turbo. He was a voice in Turbo, I should say. He was in 30 Minutes or Less, Battle Los Angeles, Eastbound and Down, Observe and Report. I mean, he's been in a ton of stuff. He was in Babel. Like, the guy, if you're looking for a Mexican, this is the guy you cast. And I mean, I hate to say that, but it's kind of true.
Honestly, dude, that was the only thing that really kind of turned me off at first, but I started getting into it when he played the stereotypical.
Well, and he was stereotypical, but at the same time, he was like this gangster with a heart of gold. Like, it was kind of funny, you know, and of course he had a lot of comedic moments. And then you have a newer guy who has been in like The Dark Knight. He was in Animals. He was in Prisoners. And that's the David Dastmalchian, who I don't really remember seeing him in anything, to be honest with you.
I remember seeing him in Batman.
Do you remember who was he in Batman?
He was like a very minor character from what I remembered.
Well, hold on. He was in The Dark Knight. He was one of the
Joker's.
I remember he was one of the Joker's thugs.
Yeah, I remembered his face.
It's a super tiny role.
Yeah, it was a tiny role, but I remembered it because it was in one of the more memorable scenes.
Well, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But yeah, this guy has been in he's been in a lot of stuff, but always like really small roles. And I can honestly see this being kind of a breakout role for him, which would be fantastic because he was actually really good.
Yeah,
he was really good.
I'll agree with that. Yeah, he was really. He played the role or the part of the team that he was part of. He played it to a T,
right,
which was good.
And then you've got Tip Harris, or T.I., who of course is the Fast and Furious movies, Step Up, Get Hard, The Hangover. He's one of those guys where, of course, he started as a rapper. I believe he's from Atlanta, right?
I don't know.
I think. Yeah, he's from Atlanta, and he started out as a rapper and made his name that way, and then transitioned, like most rappers do, into acting. And he's actually really good.
Yeah.
I like him a lot. You know, he's been in a ton of stuff, which is cool, but you know, I just actually, I really like him as a performer, I guess,
honestly,
is the right
dude,
way there.
all three of these guys paired, like teamed up. I was worried at first, but then I was like going, hey, this works.
Well, and it's one of those things where they kind of play these stereotypical characters, but not overtly stereotypical. It's not like they threw blackface on him. You know, it's not like they made him into, what's his name? Tyrese in Fast and the Furious.
Yes.
Who, for me, just completely plays this idiotic thug, and it's dumb.
Yeah.
Like, it is. And I know that at San Diego Comic-Con, and we're getting off track here a little bit, but they talked about the new Green Lantern movie.
Yes.
And how it's going to be called Green Lanterns, or Green Lantern Corps, which means that we're going to get more than one Green Lantern.
Which makes sense.
And I know Tyrese is pushing hard to play Jon Stewart.
He's been pushing hard since day one.
He's been pushing hard since 2005.
Yeah.
Okay, so 10 years he's been pushing. I don't want Tyrese. I don't.
Honestly, I don't want to either.
Jon Stewart is a very serious person.
And he's older. I honestly think
the older part doesn't bother me. The older, because Tyrese is like 45.
Tyrese looks too young.
He looks young, but it's because he doesn't age right.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
They're like Asians. They don't age right. And it doesn't make sense to me. But anyway,
because we're immortal.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And then of course you have Bobby's partner, Wood Harris, who I love Wood Harris as an actor. The guy was in The Wire. I actually just recently watched Paid in Full, which was actually pretty good. He was in Southland Tales. And what was the one?
He was in another movie. I can't remember.
Well, he played Jimi Hendrix in Hendrix, which was fantastic. Above the Rim, though, is the movie that I remember him from the most. This is from 1994. No one remembers this movie at all.
Isn't that the Tupac film?
It's Tupac, Marlon Wayans, Dwayne Martin.
Yeah, dude, I saw that in a dollar cinema.
Dude, don't care. I love that movie. Bernie Mac is in it. He plays Flip, the homeless dude.
Yep.
I mean, it's fantastic. Above the Rim is one of my all-time favorite. I saw it on HBO when I was like 14 years old movies. And so I remember watching Wood Harris in that movie. And I was just like, yeah, this is awesome, you know? But, you know, looking at Ant-Man and all of that, there were all of the problems in pre-production. There were all of the, you know, you had all of the issues with that. And you had not really knowing what was going to happen going into it. You had the Edgar Wright screen tests that were released that looked fantastic.
Yes.
But then you had Edgar Wright dropping out, and then you have Marvel taking over. Then you have Disney buying Marvel, or that's what I mean to say, not Marvel taking over. You have Disney taking over. Disney buys Marvel. Disney buys Lucasfilm. Everything gets thrown all wonky. And, you know, you saw the trailers for it, and I stay away from the trailers for the most part. Unless they're being shown at SDCC, then I watch them. Yeah. But, you know, I stay away from the trailers for the most part because it's one of those things where I don't want to be bombarded with information about a movie.
Yeah.
And so I didn't see the last couple of trailers for this one. I remember watching the Edgar Wright test footage and seeing the transition from big to small.
Yeah.
And then small to big, and I thought it looked great. And I'm happy to say that it looks almost identical.
It looks identical. I think it looks better.
Well, it does because it's more finished.
Yeah.
You know, the Edgar Wright stuff was a screen test. That's all it was.
Oh yeah.
And
I like the concept that they came up with for like this character because like honestly, dude, like I mentioned to you outside of the show, the one thing that I always had a fear of this movie is Ant-Man as a character itself is not good. Boring. Honestly, as a comic book character, I'm not a fan of Ant-Man, so I didn't have any high hopes for this movie because his powers suck. But the way that this movie portrayed the powers of actually shrinking and then going up into size and putting some science behind it actually made him look cool. Like, I honestly believe he could have taken on one of the Avengers.
Well, yeah, no, and I think that's one of the things that they did really well with the special effects in this one was it looked believable.
Yeah.
Which is kind of silly to say that you watch a guy shrink in size from being a full-size human to the size of an ant, and yet it doesn't feel like it's too far-fetched.
It's too far-fetched, yeah.
You know, and then you watch the fight scenes in this when he's like tiny and like punching a dude and the dude falls down. It doesn't feel fake.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're like that shouldn't make sense to me. Like I shouldn't be able to suspend disbelief that far. But the way that they did the special effects didn't make it jarring on the eye.
Yeah,
you know, and you know the you've seen in the. I remember the trailer showed the fight in the bedroom with the train set.
Oh, dude, that was awesome.
And, you know, you've seen the trailer, so you've seen parts of it. But when you see the whole thing done, it was done so well that, as David said, it was awesome.
Yeah, it made the character, honestly, it made me a fan of Ant-Man, which is as scary as it sounds.
Well, and I think part of what really worked out like well here was that it was filmed in a 1.85 to 1 ratio, as opposed to the rest of the Marvel movies, that's just the 2.35 to 1. And that kind of helps with the short stature of Ant-Man. It makes everything look smaller. And what they did with the ants in the movie was just
awesome.
Beyond incredible. Beyond incredible. It didn't feel like with Lord of the Rings and they showed the dragon and it looked CGI.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, you saw it and you're like, oh, okay, it's a CGI dragon.
Yeah.
There was no question in your mind that it wasn't real. But then they do all of this stuff with these little bitty ants and they're huge and they don't look fake.
Yeah.
They look like ants.
Yeah.
And I give them credit there. Like, and I understand that with a dragon, it's a lot harder because dragons are fucking fake and there's no such thing as a dragon. So all you people out there in internet land, they're going to fucking freak out about that comment. Go fuck yourselves. Anyway, you know, it's one of those things where I thought that they just did an absolutely fantastic job from point A to point B to point C. And I feel like, you know, one of the things that I harp on this show is pacing of a movie.
Yeah.
And I never felt bored. I never felt bored. And in almost every other Marvel movie, there has been at least a 5 or 6 or 10 or 50-minute part where I felt bored. And in this movie, I never once felt like, okay, can we move on?
Yeah.
I felt like everything that was on screen was story important. And I felt like everything that they did was what needed to be done.
Well, the opposite too. They didn't go too fast either.
Well, that's what I mean.
We just flew right through.
Well, it's like when you watch Thor and, you know, the whole love story is just sped through.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that was a mistake.
And that's, I mean, you're right. They got the pacing just like with Guardians of the Galaxy. I always said Guardians had the correct pacing of how to tell a story, what they were going for.
Right.
They did the same thing for Ant-Man.
Right, and I absolutely agree with you here. And I think honestly, for me, one of the people in the movie that kind of stole every scene that she was in was the little girl that played Paul Rudd's daughter.
I will agree with that.
Abby,
those scenes actually kind of made me have the feels, you know.
Well, Abby Ryder Fortson is the girl that plays his daughter, and I think the only other thing that she's really been in is a small movie called Playing It Cool that had Chris Evans and Michelle Moynihan in it that no one saw back in 2014. No. And she played the part of little girl. So couldn't have been that important. But I think that especially at the beginning of the movie when they were setting the tone for how it was going to be, they gave her a personality immediately.
Yeah. And I liked that.
I did too. She wasn't just a kid. She had her own thoughts, her own feelings. She was a little girl that missed her daddy.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, that fucking killed me.
But you know what I like too is the fact they didn't overplay the whole, oh, she just loves her dad.
No,
you
not
got
at
the
all.
feeling that she loves her stepdad and she loves her mom, but she loves all of them.
Right.
Just like a kid, a real kid would.
Well, she was a little person. Like she wasn't just she wasn't set dressing.
Yeah.
She wasn't just a child that's there to be a child to move the story along. She wasn't a MacGuffin.
Yeah.
Like she was there and she had an integral part to the story. He kind of tied in to Paul Rudd, although Paul Rudd's character was ridiculously relatable, which I think is one of those things that they've kind of almost been missing from the Marvel universe, because you can't relate to the Hulk. You can't relate to Thor. You can't relate to billionaire Iron Man.
Well, wouldn't you say, though, relatability is almost like a personal taste?
Well, absolutely. But I'm just saying, like, if you look at the other characters in the Marvel universe,
okay,
like once they get their superpowers,
so
you'll say like Chris Evans with his super serum.
Okay.
Or the fact that, you know, he was frozen for 70 years. You can't relate to that.
Okay.
You can't. Like, yes, you can relate to the fish out of water part.
Yeah.
But you can't completely relate to the character.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas with Paul Rudd, you have this character that made a mistake, paid for his mistake, is trying to atone for his mistake, and is just seeing nothing but disappointment after disappointment after disappointment in trying to get his life back on track.
Yeah, I will agree with you with that, because I was going to say is, like, you know, there are characters that are relatable in some sense. Like, say, for example, you find it relatable with Scott Lang. I find it relatable to Tony Stark in certain aspects because you know me.
Because you have $1 billion.
Well, no.
No, I know what you relate to with Tony Stark. But at the same time, I think the Marvel Universe has sorely missed that whole part of Tony Stark's personality.
I will agree with that. They do touch on it, though, very briefly.
And it's only Pepper's little side comments.
And also kind of like the points where, like, I'll be honest, in Iron Man 2, not the greatest Iron Man, but there were times in the thing when you knew that they were trying to play up the fact that Tony was an alcoholic.
Okay, cool. You said it. I didn't want to be the one that said what your issue was, David,
yes.
but there it is. So for those of you that don't listen to the Rain Man show, or have you been on the Rain Man show actually?
Very rarely. It's actually Tony who's the star.
Yeah, Tony's the star of that one. That, by the way, Tony is David's brother. For those of you that listen to Rain Man but don't listen to From the Back to Tank, and I don't know why you wouldn't listen to From the Back to Tank. It's fucking great. Anyway, David, especially when we were doing the show that shall not be named, we got into that quite a bit on that show. We did. And, we talked about my own personal demons and your demons and Michael's. We talked about everybody's demons on that show because it was 4 hours fucking long and it was a marathon every goddamn time. But, it's one of those things where we talked about all of that. And David, that is how you relate to Tony Stark. And I understand that.
That's what I mean about relatability with characters.
But see, what I'm talking about is more of a character that is almost wholeheartedly relatable because he's just a regular dude.
Okay.
He's just a regular dude and he's not a billionaire in a suit.
Okay.
It's the same thing with when you look at the superhero movies coming out from DC. Like, you look at Superman, he's a god.
Yeah.
You look at Batman, millionaire in a suit, or billionaire in a suit. Green Lantern, he's got a power ring. How many humans have power rings? None. Okay. Like, and that's what I'm saying. Like, nobody has the super serum. Nobody's a god from Asgard.
Yeah.
So with the Marvel so far up to this point, for the most part, you've had to relate to those characters through either pieces of their personality or tertiary characters in the script.
Yeah.
Like Jane
or I'm trying to even think. Pepper. I'm trying to even think of like male characters that actually, well, Hawkeye is probably the closest one.
Maybe, but I mean, are you an expert marksman and have you been in the military your whole life?
True, but Hawkeye
that's all I'm saying, dude. Is that yes, okay, with the Avengers 2, they made Hawkeye more relatable because he has a family.
He has a family.
Right, but they had to do that because they didn't have anybody else to relate to.
True.
Because at this point, we're so entrenched in the superhero personas that we've almost kind of forgotten about the personal struggles that these guys go through, which is why they had to throw in the backstory for Black Widow and they had to throw in the backstory for Hawkeye.
Yeah.
They had to. They didn't have a choice. Now with we're not with Hank Pym, but with Paul
Scott
Rudd.
Lang.
Thank you, Scott Lang. He's not a genius. Yes, he has a master's degree in mechanical engineering.
Yeah, but
he's
there's
not a genius.
lot of people that can have master's degrees in mechanical.
He's not a genius. He is a very good thief.
Yes.
Okay, and maybe you don't relate to that, but you can relate to the fact that he's just trying to be a normal guy.
Yeah.
And, life keeps shitting all over his face.
To be honest, dude, I thought one of the funniest points of the movie that it was when we first saw Paul Rudd or Scott Lang do his thieving scenes and everything else. Yeah, I remember you nudged me and you basically go, "That's Paul Rudd. That can't be Paul Rudd doing that." That's what I'm. Scott Lang is super in his own sense. He's probably not on the league of, say, Captain America, but he does have some superhuman qualities.
Right. Now, you're going to love this, though. I'm reading through the trivia, and we had talked about, why Edgar Wright left.
Yeah.
Now, in an interview, Peyton Reed admits that the reason Wright left was because he wanted to make the film's story about an ant who is given the power to become a man, instead of a man becoming the size of an ant.
What? That can't be real. There's no way.
I don't know.
Ant that becomes human? No.
I don't know. That's really strange.
Edgar Wright has done some strange movies. I don't think he would actually go that far with this character.
I don't think he would have either, but I think that's fantastic if it's true.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I would have liked to have seen that movie, just not called it Ant-Man or be in the Marvel Universe. So like I said, with this movie, I super enjoyed the hell out of it. I felt like the special effects in it were really, really, really well done. Just like in Guardians of the Galaxy, I think that Industrial Light and Magic has a stranglehold on special effects in movies at this point.
Yeah,
I know that Weta Studios, I think they just go a little bit beyond their scope from time to time, which is what happened with The Hobbit. And I think that ILM does a fantastic job at keeping it where they can be after the atrocity that were, episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Star Wars.
Yes, absolutely.
I think they learned their lesson and decided, okay, we can't do that.
Yeah.
And then I think that they put a director, kind of like they did with James Gunn, put a director in charge of this one that maybe you weren't expecting it to be what it was. And they absolutely giving these guys a chance, I think, has worked out very well for Marvel.
Yeah.
It could have been a disaster.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think that Kevin Feige over there at Marvel has done a fantastic job at picking talent.
He knows what he's doing, man. He just knows.
I hate to admit that. I really do. I hate to admit that, but you're absolutely right. He does. He knows what's up. He knows what's going on. And of course, you've got the Marvel Cinematic Universe and then the Marvel Television Universe. And, I mentioned that Agent Carter was in this.
Yes.
Briefly, but she is in it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where they're tying it all together without tying it all together.
Yeah.
And I love that because, of course, Agent Carter has been in the Captain America movies. She's been in, I think she was in one of the Avengers movies as a flashback. In Avengers 2. And then, of course, now she makes a cameo in this one. There's a couple other cameos. I don't want to really get into it. Of course, Stan Lee makes an appearance. There's no surprises there.
But you know what, dude? The cameos, they didn't take away from the movie.
Not at all.
It wasn't like we were looking for the cameos.
No, we weren't. I mean, that's another thing is that this is one of those movies where when you sit down, you're going to be entertained. And you can lose yourself in this movie. I know I did. Yeah. I absolutely lost myself in the movie. And part of that goes back to what we were talking about before when we talk about pacing and the chemistry between the characters. It all felt very natural. Like these were all interactions that these characters would have.
Yeah.
It didn't feel forced. I don't feel like anything in here felt forced. As opposed to the Jane Thor love story, which feels forced every time I watch it on screen.
You and everybody else.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where, what's her name? The chick. Who plays Jane?
Oh my God, I can't.
Natalie Portman. Like, of course, she was super upset about Thor 2 not being directed by her lesbian friend, and that's fine. Like, whatever, suck it up. You're an actress, do your fucking job. But it's so forced. That whole interaction between the two of them just feels so wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the worst point for interactions of characters when it comes to Marvel and the chemistry that they don't have. Of course, Downey Jr. has chemistry with everybody he's on set with.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because the guy is just charismatic as hell, and I think that Paul Rudd playing, of course, once again, an everyman is what he's really good at, worked really well for this movie.
Yeah, I will agree with that.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things where in watching it, like I said, you believe him as this character. You believe Michael Douglas as Hank Pym. You believe Evangeline Lilly as Pym's half estranged daughter.
Yeah,
you do.
I would call her half estranged.
There was quite a bit of conflict there, and I loved the story arc for each of these characters. I didn't feel like there were any characters that didn't have a complete story arc aside from Judy Greer, who you knew what her bag was immediately.
Yes.
Or the three amigos, like his little crew, like you knew what they were there for.
Yeah.
And it all worked out really, really well. I think it's one of those things where. Who's the fucking guy that directed this, Dave? What's his name?
We keep forgetting his name.
I know. I feel really bad about that because he did a great job. Peyton Reed. And I think it's one of those things where Peyton Reed brought out of these actors, who are all phenomenal actors on their own, he brought out of them almost a next level kind of thing, especially out of Paul Rudd.
Now, the only thing I'm just trying to figure out, though, dude, just thinking about it just now, is... Do you think like this type of storytelling where it's more if you notice like with this phase of movies, it's more with Ant-Man, it's a more personal storytelling.
I don't think it's any more personal than what you got with Guardians of the Galaxy and Star-Lord.
I don't know. I think it's more personal.
I think they focused on it more.
Yeah.
I think they focused on it more because the cast was smaller. Because you still had the personal story of Evangeline Lilly and Hank Pym.
Yeah.
You still had the personal story of the bad guy, Corey Stoll.
Yeah.
And Hank Pym and Evangeline Lilly. Like all of this is all very much about the personal relationships between everybody.
Yeah.
Which is how Guardians of the Galaxy was too, if you think about it. Like, yes, you had the big bad. You had the big bad, and the big bad was the big bad just because he was the big bad.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, like Loki has his reasons for being bad.
Yes.
And I think that Guardians is one of the few movies in the Marvel Universe where the big bad doesn't really have a reason to be bad, except for he's just bad. Yes, I know he hated those people because they murdered all of his people.
Yeah.
Oh, that's been done a million times.
Yeah.
You know,
it's kind of like Ultron. Ultron was the bad because he was the bad.
Well, yeah, but there was also then that personal relationship there that was wonky because Ultron hated his creator. Like, that's what it was. Ultron wanted to destroy Tony Stark.
Yeah.
That's all it was.
If you notice, every single one of the villains has like this personal.
Absolutely. Well, that's always been Marvel's bag, though. That's always been Marvel's thing.
Yeah.
That every villain has a personal reason for doing it. You know, and even if you go all the way back into any comic book, you know, from Marvel or DC, they all have that personal reason. Like Lex Luthor tries to destroy the alien because he thinks that's what's best for the world.
Because he's an alien and not a human.
Exactly. He doesn't belong here. Yeah. Because Lex Luthor is really from South Carolina. Like,
oh, wow. Oh, now I'm thinking about Stars and Bars.
Right. So I'm just saying, though, like that's Lex Luthor's bag. You've got Doomsday. When you find out what all happened with Doomsday, the reason he wants to destroy Superman is because of his personal hatred for the Kryptonians.
Yeah.
Right. You look at Brainiac. He wants to personally collect something from every planet and then destroy the planet so that he's the only person that can collect it.
Yeah.
Right. So they all have these own personal reasons for doing things, you know, and you look at the Marvel universe and they all have personal reasons, but they're almost always broader.
Yes.
They're always a little bit broad. Like Thanos wants to rule the galaxy.
Well, I think a perfect character that simplifies that is Magneto. Right? Well, Magneto is a villain. Whether you want to believe it or not, he is a villain.
He does things,
but he does things because of he believes that they're right.
Well, here's the thing. Magneto does things to preserve the way of life for the mutants.
Yeah.
Now that makes him a villain to most humans, right? But a savior for a lot of mutants.
Yeah.
You know, so he's Hitler, and he's the thing he hates the most. He's become the thing he hates the most. And you look at what happened here with
Cross.
With Cross and his whole story arc, which don't be confused, there is a large story arc here for the villain.
Yeah.
You know, because he starts off not so bad.
Then he becomes
and then he gets worse. And then he loses his shit. And there's no other way to say it. And I mean, that's what pushes this movie forward.
Yeah.
It's the villain in this one that actually pushes the storyline forward. It's not the hero.
Yeah.
The hero's there. And there are multiple heroes for this story. And I love the way that they set up with this movie so much more of the Marvel universe that you're not even really aware that they're doing it.
Oh yeah, that was actually really cool tongue-in-cheek moments where
there were.
I was like going, really? Okay.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Like, if you pay attention to this movie, you will see things in it that kind of give away parts of Phase 3.
Yeah.
And if you stay for the middle credit scene, you'll see some more. And you stay for the end credit scene,
and you'll see some
you'll
more.
see even more. So yes, folks, there are 2 credit scenes on this one. They're both fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spoil either one because fuck you, that's why.
Honestly, dude, I think the Easter eggs, the way the Easter eggs were done in this one, because there were a couple that I noticed, they were done just as well as Captain America's Winter Soldier.
Oh,
Winter Soldier did it.
Absolutely.
And that was like kind of like the thing that everyone kind of looked at like, oh, in Winter Soldier, this happened, and this happened to connect all this.
Right.
I think you can honestly use the Ant-Man because there were so many that if you were actually looking and you wanted to look, it's there, but it doesn't affect the story in any way.
Right, absolutely. And what was the other thing? There was something else. There was a small little thing that I absolutely love that they threw in there.
I like the very ending because I was like going, I don't know if we can spoil it or not, but the Easter egg they left in the very end was very tongue-in-cheek between when they were telling the story of what happens next, and the one journalist makes the comment about, oh, we do superheroes, and then she gives off a description of a superhero.
Oh, so
and you're like going, really?
No, it was so good. It was so good. It was so cool that they threw that little scene in.
Yeah,
that one little thing. It's an Easter egg, and it's super obvious. If you miss it, you've fallen asleep.
Yeah,
but it's really good. And one of the smaller Easter eggs though that I absolutely adored in this movie was there were some scenes that were set in San Francisco.
Yes,
and I don't know if you remember in The Incredible Hulk from 2008, which we talked about earlier.
Yes,
the bottling company that Bruce Banner worked
for. Yeah, I noticed that.
The Pingo Doce.
Yeah, the Pingo Doce.
They had those posters up in San Francisco, which I thought was fantastic. I was like, that is awesome.
The only thing I noticed is I wanted to see if they would actually allude to Daredevil, because Daredevil has been really good.
Well, it has been, and at the same time, though, they straight up at one point, Scott actually says something about the Avengers, which was hilarious. There were so many laughs in the theater, and we actually had a really good group to see the movie with. I was a little bit scared at first because the one kid kept screaming. And I don't mean like he was a baby. I mean, he was like 20 and kept yelling.
Yeah.
Like someone should have punched him in the face, but whatever. He shut the fuck up for the entire movie, which was awesome. But the crowd that we had was very receptive and very good. And you could actually gauge their reactions.
Yeah.
Fairly easily. It was a very good preview crowd, which we don't normally get.
Really?
No, most of the time, man, you've always got somebody talking, or it's just frustrating. Like Thomas and I have lamented about it a million times, how we wish they would just let the reviewers in.
Maybe I'm a good luck charm then.
Possibly. Maybe I'll bring you for more of these. But anyways, guys, I think with this movie, you're going to be entertained.
Absolutely.
You're gonna laugh. You're gonna get your heartstrings tugged on a little bit.
You're gonna get the feels.
You're gonna get some feels. You're gonna love the special effects for this one. It's just as good as Guardians of the Galaxy, if not maybe even a little bit better.
Yes.
You're gonna love the secondary and tertiary characters. They're fantastic. From point A to the very, very end to point Z, the movie is, in my eyes, a home run. It has rocketed up my list for Marvel movies. Guardians is still my favorite.
Yeah.
Guardians is still my favorite, mainly because the Guardians soundtrack was just so good.
Oh, Guardians soundtrack was awesome.
No, this soundtrack was good. Had a great soundtrack. It had a lot of Disney songs in it.
Yeah.
Or songs
which was
that
hilarious.
are owned by Disney. And they all work, and it was great. But this one had a good soundtrack too, and I love that Marvel is latching onto that soundtrack thing.
Yes,
I love that. I think that's fantastic. I think that can propel a movie from being good to great. They've taken it to a whole new level with their Phase 2 movies. The directions that they're going in and where you can see that they're going and how they're tying everything together makes perfect sense without giving away too much. They're doing a great job at it. I think that Marvel knows what's going on. I'm hoping the DC can catch up.
Yeah.
I really am, because I would love to see those characters.
You and about every other comic book fan.
And I would love to see those characters actually work out really well. Now, with this one, go see it. Flat out. This is 110% go see the movie.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
I think, what did I say at the end? I said it's fun. It's entertaining, it's funny, and Paul Rudd is perfect.
Yes.
And so I think with that, guys, that's going to do it for us here. David, thank you for coming out. You. And don't forget, guys, that we got a lot of other programming here on Rain Man Digital, and we're also going to be on terrestrial radio soon. And I'm sure Mike has some little snippet or something that he's going to cut in. Anyways, guys, thanks a lot for listening. We always appreciate it. If you want to comment on anything, you can always hit me up on Facebook. I'm always available. Twitter is at cesspool66. It's a little bit easier to find me there. Anyways, talk to you later, guys. Have fun.
The Corova Milk Bar sold Milk Plus, Velicet, or Synthemesk, or Drencrum, which is what we were drinking. This would sharpen you up and make you ready for a bit of the old ultra-violence.